Yeah, Lakshman is joining us shortly. I know.
Great. Thanks for confirming. Gladys, I think we can wait a few minutes and then we can start. Welcome, Oana, also. We are still waiting for a few minutes and then Gladys will start the webinar.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everybody.
Hello. So good morning, everyone. Today, Gladys Ombati from Strathmore University will moderate this discussion. It seems that we are still waiting for one speaker to join. Gladys, do you think that we could start, or do we still wait for one more minute?
I think it's Dr. Namu.
Yes, yes.
I think we can wait 1 minute. I don't know if Tumaini has any feedback. Tumaini?
Yes, somehow I was in and I was kicked out. So he's also trying to access the platform. It logs and logs out. So
Let me send you a link. You can send him.
yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, Tumaini, I've sent you the link. You can share with Doc.
Colleagues, I propose that if you're in agreement, we can start at 9:10 as Doc tries to fix the joining and the joining call issue.
9:10, 9:15. 9:10 is in a minute.
Yeah, I think so. It's fair to start and
Okay,
yeah, if you're in
okay.
agreement.
No problem.
So 9:15. So in 6 minutes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
I think we can start. I know.
Yes. Good morning again. I think we can start now. It's 16 past. And perhaps if it's that the fourth speaker will not join, then we need to do so that, for example, Tumaini will give the introduction to the theme.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
No
but please,
problem.
let's start.
Okay. Thanks a lot, I know. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and thank you for your resilience in waiting for us to start this webinar series. We are happy to have you on board joining us. So thank you so much for taking your time to join us. And without taking much time, I want to introduce the webinar series today that we're going to have. And the topic for this webinar is opportunities and challenges in integrating the water energy food nexus approaches for resilience and sustainability, especially in Africa. And we chose this topic because we would like to know or discover how the WEF Nexus approach is being used to transform sustainable resource management and resilience strategies in Africa. So the reason we want to have this panel discussion today is we have seen so much the criticism of the WEF Nexus framework about it being so theoretical than practical. So we want to ask ourselves as researchers, people in academia, people in the industry and innovation, how can we make this framework practical than theoretical, as it has been used since 2012, but we are seeing a very slow adoption and little impact, especially on the continent. So how are we able to make this framework practical, and how can it be used in research and evidence-based policy and innovation at large? And therefore, how can we also improve it, because we have challenges in terms of mitigation of climate change external shocks. So how can this framework be used to help in making these decisions in good time, and as such improve it? So we are going to also gain further insights into the unique climate change, socio-ecological and innovation factors that have influenced the water, energy and food here being also agriculture, land use, solutions at community levels. So we want to see how local solutions and practical policy recommendations can actually come together for us to have a sustainable future, especially on the continent. So this webinar is being hosted by LIPRI. It is a European Union project that is based upon the Preparing for a Long-Term Joint EU-AU Research and Innovation Partnership on Renewable Energy. So it is a formulation of research and innovation and human institution capacity building agenda on the renewable energy space. And just to look at their portfolio is that we have over 31 renewable energy research and innovation projects, and one of the clusters being the water energy food nexus. So that is why we're having this webinar. For those of you who would like to look at the other projects, among the 31, we have different clusters. So we will leave details on how you can look at other renewable energy research and innovation projects like clean cooking. I know people who are here and interested in solar photovoltaic projects, so you can have that. But today we are focusing on the water, energy, food themes. So the other sister project that is hosting this webinar is the One Planet project. It's also an EU Horizon project, and it is a consortium of African and European partners who are seeking to empower African policymakers, researchers and investors in terms of what knowledge and tools we need to use to increase clean energy production. So energy is the center focus of the One Planet project, but also trying to see how we can improve resource management with the water and food nexus, because water and food also directly impact the energy space. So the One Planet project is looking at 3 case studies in Africa: the Nkomati Soto area in South Africa, the Songwe River Basin within Malawi and Tanzania, and then finally the Niger River Basin that is in Niger and Cape Verde. So we'll stop there. That is the 2 sister projects that are hosting these webinar series, and we are hoping that you will have a good panel discussion, that you will give us insights. We will learn from you, you will learn from us. So thank you very much, and thank you for taking time. I will go straight on to welcome our speakers. We have 4 speakers today who will form our panel. And the first speaker was supposed to be Dr. Namo. I see him, he has joined. So Dr. Namo Lakson is a research manager with the Water Research Commission in South Africa, and he specializes in agriculture, water management, and transformative and circular approaches for sustainable climate change adoption. He was formerly with the International Water Management Institute and is also an honorary researcher with the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. He prides himself on working with transforming the livelihoods of vulnerable smallholder farmers in marginalized areas, and he has more than 20 years of progressive research spanning 3 continents: in South America, in Europe, where he has his higher education from, and in Southern Africa, of course, because that is home, I know. So we are happy to have him here, and he will be the one taking us through the first phase of this webinar, and we will also have him in the panel. Our second speaker will be Tumaini John Wambua, who is a PhD researcher at the IHE Delft Institute for Water Education and the University of KwaZulu-Natal. His research is analyzing nationally determined contributions in the Global South from a water, energy, food, and climate perspective. John is a Rotary International Scholar and a Young Water Solutions Fellow, and he has a background in water management and governance, being a master's degree from the same IHE Delft, where he's currently a PhD student. Then we will have our third speaker, who is Miss Jegede Kemi. She's a chemical engineering student, PhD student at the University of Cape Town in South Africa, and she's also a lecturer at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. She holds a master's degree in engineering from the University of Cape Town, and her research focuses on optimizing integrated supply chain and energy distribution networks for rural off-grid communities. She aims to develop sustainable energy solutions that can meet diverse energy needs, considering factors like resource availability, climate, and local conditions. And finally, we will be joined with Oana, and she's a senior research fellow at Tampere University of Technology and a postdoctoral fellow at the Finnish Academy of Science. And myself, your host and moderator, I am Gladys Ombati from Strathmore University in Nairobi, Kenya. My background is in IT and statistics, and I currently lead the energy modeling unit in under the Research and Innovation UNESCO Chair for Climate Change and Sustainability in Strathmore University. My focus is in toolkits that can help and empower African policymakers, researchers, and people in academia with the necessary know-how so that we can be able to increase clean energy generation and sustainable use of resources while reducing inequalities and cultural socioeconomic inequities on the continent. So at this juncture, I'd like to welcome Dr. Namu, who will give us the introduction to this webinar and why it is important actually to have the WEF Nexus approach in our research. Welcome, Dr. Namu.
Someone confirm that you can hear me.
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Thank you, colleagues. And you can see me. Is that correct?
we are we are
Yeah, I'm
squinting.
okay. I'm at a hotel. I was driving, so that's why I joined late. My apologies, colleagues, and to everyone. It has
It's
just
okay.
been hectic. Past 3 months for me, back-to-back meetings, and from 6 o'clock I've just been driving to a conference where I'm actually needed after this conference. So yeah, it's quite hectic, but here I am. I managed to join to be on time, but that's
Welcome.
okay. Is Thank you so much. I'm going to give. We combined our presentation with the Tumaini, so I
Yes,
will give a talk to introduce the Water and Food Nexus first. So yeah, next slide.
Sheila, you
Let-
can project the presentation.
Oh, there it is. There it is. There it is. Exactly. No, thank you, colleagues. Maybe I need to. I know it's very dark. I'm not at my office, so it's a hotel, so the light is limited. With your permission, please, I'm going to switch off the video. Okay, okay. Yeah, this is a quite interesting workshop or symposium, whichever you want to call it. Quite interesting in the sense that we are in a transitional period where we are moving from the linear model of running economies to the circular economy, which is more transformative, more holistic, more integrated, and more cross sectorial. And I'm going to provide the reasons why we need to transition from that model linear to the circular economy, and why WEF Nexus all of a sudden since 2015 everyone the WEF Nexus is more of a light, a candle in a dark room where everyone can see it. Even if we are writing a proposal, everyone wants to include the water, energy, food nexus. So yeah, so I'm going to explain why. And personally, I'm from the Water Research Commission, and we have done quite a lot of research on the water, energy, food nexus, and we have even written a lot of articles. Hopefully, if there are WEF Nexus people here, we have gone through my name, Laksonamo, Tafadzgo Mabaudi, Sylvester Mpandeli. They are my colleagues. We have been working on this water energy food nexus for over 8 years. So, what has promoted this water energy food nexus? Why now? Why? Okay, there are three thematic areas that came to fore in 2015 when around 2011 when the SDGs were being formulated. Why? Because there were changes, noticeable changes. One of the major uh, drivers. In fact, there are four thematic areas that we want to discuss here, which is the drivers of change, risk and exposure, and how do we prepare and recover. We see today Cyclone Elene there, Ellen in America, floods in Japan, and so forth. How do we prepare? I was giving another presentation somewhere where I said we've surpassed the threshold of mitigation. What is needed now is resilience and adaptation. So how do we adapt and how do we enhance resilience? Okay, on the side uh, of the drivers of change, three major resources: water, energy, and food. I'm going to demonstrate that these are interconnected. So the issue of driving economies through a sector-based approach it has been very beneficial to a certain extent, but it has reached its threshold, its limit. It cannot solve the current grand challenges that are interconnected, that are interlinked, that are cross-sectorial in nature. Therefore, one of the challenges, one of the drivers is rapid urbanization, which is resulting in increased demand of water, energy, and food. And these three resources, they are degrading. And as I was saying, on my other talk, the three resources of water, energy, and food, they are both culprits and victims. They are causing climate change. Look at how land, how there's a lot of deforestation because of urbanization, because of the need to grow more food in order to meet the growing demand. And this food, these agricultural activities needs more water, and the people still need more water. And this agriculture needs more energy to pump. For example, if it is irrigated agriculture, water needs to be pumped from the river, from the dam to the field. So the three are connected. You cannot work on them separately. Agriculture expansion, I've said, shrinking food basket, degradation, depletion of resources, population growth, which is causing rapid urbanization. Of course, urbanization is regarded as a strategy for climate change adaptation and resilience. I want to give the middle event there. I want to give an example of what is happening, the current status of Southern Africa, because this symposium is based mainly on Africa. So why Southern Africa? For example, you see that in Southern Africa there will be Southern Africa will not be able to will only be able to provide only 13% of food requirements by 2030, 2050. Only 13%. So where is the 87% going to come from? Continuing in the present scenario, where is the other 87% going to come from if we continue with the business as usual? And we can proceed 15%, there will be 15% decrease in the agricultural yields by 2050 if global warming increases by 2%. Only by 2%, 15% in decrease in agricultural production. So the region won't be able to feed its people. And already we can also say 60% of people in rural areas who depend on agriculture are at risk of climate change. They are the most vulnerable because they don't have resources to adapt. And 60% of the population in Southern Africa reside in rural areas where they rely on rain-fed agriculture. And all these people are at risk because of the challenges that we are talking about. And imagine 75 to 250 million people. In 2020, this has already passed. And 350 there will be a lot of noise, colleagues. Forgive me, I'm not in my room, in my office, so people can just get in and so forth. Apologies for that, but let's hope it's fine. And 350 to 600 million in 2050 will be at risk of increased water stress. Already many people in the region, over 50% of our people are living in water stressed regions. So what is the challenge? What are the risks? These risks, they are risks to livelihoods, human and environmental health, because of the destruction of forests and the people actually building on mountains. Our urban areas, we see houses on urban areas. Where are the snakes going to live? Where are the monkeys going? Today, monkeys are in the cities, and there's a danger of zoonotic diseases. There are risks to both human and the environment, and there is a danger of achieving achieving the sustainable development goals. So how do we prepare? We have identified these challenges. There is a risk, a huge risk. These zoonotic diseases or the emergence of novel diseases and pests is already manifesting Ebola, mpox, COVID-19, and all these things. These diseases are with us. How do we prepare? We need to transition. We need to transform. We need to change, do things through how? Through Nexus planning. Nexus planning also includes water, energy, food nexus. We need to do scenario planning. We need to move to transition from the linear economy to the circular economy and achieve sustainable food systems. People, agriculture is both a culprit and a victim. and we need just a transition. These are some of the transformative approaches. And this, if we manage to do this, we will have water, energy, and food security, and we improved livelihoods and nutrition, and this will enhance resilience and adaptation. Next slide. Next slide. Yes. So what is this WEF Nexus thing? What is the Nexus? What is Nexus planning, Nexus thinking? It has been given a lot of names. Some start with F, then they call it few, and so forth, for reasons better known to them. So Nexus is all about simultaneous, holistic, cross-sectorial planning and the management of interlinked sectors, because any change in one of these sectors also impact on the other two. So if you need to improve or to increase, for example, the irrigated area, you should see that there's enough energy. You should also see that there's enough water. For example, in Southern Africa, there is now the region I'm talking about. There's a huge need to increase the irrigated area, but is there enough water? The region is facing serious water energy crisis. So it's about simultaneous. Think about it. It's a noble to increase the irrigated area. It's very noble, but you need to consider the other two in connected sectors. Nexus planning is more than WEF Nexus. Well, we have done of the WEF Nexus, but we have also done a research on water, health, environment, and nutrition, which we call WEF Nexus, and there's urban Nexus. Those are just examples. So there are many various types of Nexus planning. So Nexus planning is a broader term covering all Nexus types. Next slide. Okay, the WEF Nexus and its complex. It's very complex. I don't want to lie. It's quite complex. With the essence of WEF Nexus, I'm going to demonstrate. Now, the essence of Nexus, it enhances security of intricately connected resources, mainly water, energy, and food, which means the developments in one sector should only be implemented after considering the impacts on the other sectors, which means we need to consider the trade-offs of any developmental project and the synergies as well. I gave an example of irrigated area expansion. I'm not going to repeat that. Just think of that. There are also trade-offs and there are synergies. We need to address the trade-offs, but maybe enhance the synergies. And it's all about cross-sectorial management of resources. We need to break the silos and make sure that the WEF Nexus is a discourse tool where stakeholders can meet and discuss developmental projects. So how do we do this? I remember when I was giving a talk somewhere else, I was asked, Lakson, was talking of very important things, but where is the evidence? Where is the evidence? Can you demonstrate this? Yeah, I was tired and I went to the drawing board, but I'm going to demonstrate to you later what we did. We developed the models already. The concept of water, energy, food nexus is multifaceted. It's transdisciplinary. It includes water, energy, and food sectors with the different units of measurements. So how do we connect them? It's multidimensional. You've got many centers of thinking, and it's polycentric, many centers, making it quite complex. So, but however, since 2015, the water, energy, food nexus, why it became so prominent, it was because of the security of these three resources. Therefore, you need to think about their availability, accessibility, self-sufficiency, and productivity. The only way to address this is through a multi-criteria decision method. I'm going to talk about that later. Next slide. I tend to talk too much here. I don't want to overpass my time. Next slide. Okay, secularity and alternative to a sustainable by 2030. When I give my second presentation, I'll talk about that. It's linear. Why do we, where would we need to move from the linear approach to the secular approach? Linear or monocentric approaches. Monocentric only have a center, single center, like the integrated water resources management. It's everything must start and end with water. Everything should be answerable to water, which is wrong. What you are saying is wrong. That's why we are facing the challenges that we are facing today. They are sector-based resource planning and the management. They are divergent sector-based priorities, and they aggravate contemporary crises. And they focus on the present situation without mirroring into the future, like what is needed through sustainable development goals. And why now? The advantages of the secular polycentric approaches, their cross-sectorial resource planning and management caters for both the present and the future, and they expedite the resilience building initiatives, and they create a balanced system through the secular modeling. And that spider graph that you see there, we developed through our model, and this is for South Africa. You can see, I'm going to explain that later. I'm a bit afraid of my time. I don't want to be called my boss. My boss is just 20 meters away from, but I told them I'm giving a speech. So next slide. Oh, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namu. And thank you for taking us through this concept of the WEF Nexus approach. I'm hoping that we are getting the points. And if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the chat. Our panelists will be looking out for them and answering you on the go, and some will be discussed on the panel later. So thank you for taking us through the understanding of WEF, the risks, the complexities around it, and if we are ready actually to break silos so that we can implement the WEF Nexus. So our next presentation, our next speaker will be talking about policy integration in the WEF Nexus, and that is Tumaini John. Tumaini, if you're ready, please.
Yeah, sure. Greetings, colleagues. One, I will pick up from what Dr. Namo left. Let me try and see if my camera will work, or yeah, this works. So in the couple of previous slides, Dr. Namo highlighted the multidisciplinarity, transdisciplinarity, and complexity of the water, energy, and food nexus, or the nexus sectors. And as he mentions, different scholars or different people refer to the order of the water, energy, and food in different types and preferences. We do not entirely have any problem with the preference of what order of the sectors is argued or placed forth. So when we're looking at these three sectors, we realize that the interconnectedness or complexities are all geared towards achieving energy security, water security, food security, and then in such a way that one of the sectors is actively mobilized to meet the availability or make enough food available. An example is given about irrigation agriculture. So expanding, for example, agriculture, then you come up with a problem framing. So then there has to be a discourse between the landowners, land use, and regulation, and then that calls for understanding how this problem or competing interests can be put or aligned in such a way that they can concurrently feed and work together. That's where we create the concept of having the three core main domains. We have a conceptual framework which tries to understand these linkages and tie them with policy instruments or ways of making decisions that do not always compete or create what we call we identify as the risk of bureaucracy. Then if you have a way of connecting or making an interconnected way of addressing issues, then we create analytical tools. Dr. Namo just highlighted one of the tools that is called the WEF Nexus Index, where it is kind gives a composite uses composite features to highlight the areas or the national uh, demands and capabilities of a country. For example, in Southern Africa or Kenya or Somalia, you can easily input a country's name, then the tool creates or quantifies the spider web, which is quite interesting. Then if you look at it with such tools, you create an overview where you see what is trading, what is competing with what, and what is feeding into what, such that the water, energy, and food resources are together at an bird's eye view scene, and they can be zoomed in per sector. Next slide, please. Yeah, an example. This is a schematic example where we look at, for example, we start from how these sectors feed into each other. For example, in the water sector, which is obviously or mainly regulated to maintain water quality and water availability. However, you realize that hydropower in some of these cases is very water intensive and uses a lot of water, so that there is water for hydropower. And the other one, on the other side, there is energy needed to pump the water, the quality water, to be distributed to particular um, users. You can go all the way from water to food, energy to food. And what you realize that at every sector, we have at least an existing tool. What happens if these tools are mobilized individually or independently, then there is the challenge of competing for the same resource. So, for example, you have something like what we call a Capri model, otherwise known as Common Agricultural Policy and Regional Impact Analysis. This looks at regional cases and policies on environmental impacts of large-scale agriculture, things like that. And then you have the E3ME model in the energy that looks at the economies of having energy and energy for economic growth. What the WEF Nexus approach or idea brings, it brings a practical and useful way of bringing or interlinking these models in such a way that we minimize the competition, but most importantly, build on the already existed quantities and qualities and aggregations of data per different sector. Only in this case, bring them together, work step by step or hand in hand to ensure that there is water security, food security, and energy security. And in this case, also considering um, environmental or what we call ecosystem integrity. Next one, please. Yeah, in the African context, Dr. Namo, this a slide that looks at the African context from what Dr. Namos in a previous slide was talking about. So if you narrow down from the global to the African context, we realize that we have common pressures that are across the African continent. And in this, the most used or reused example is rapid population growth. And then I will not go through all the pressures, but I can just pick the rapid population growth. And then if we are having rapid population growth, then we have an exposure of risk that we have uh, high frequency of serious droughts and also unforeseen weather events like the current floods in the most recent floods in South Africa. And then you realize that also South Africa is also suffering from quite a big issue with energy shedding. So load shedding, that is blackouts. And not only in South Africa, this context can almost be likened into different parts of Africa. Then for you to achieve then transport to deal with these challenges, you need governments to work together, and in most cases, either way, these resources are transboundary. For example, you find the Nkomati Sud with 16 countries, and you look at the East Africa region, for example, the Lake Victoria Basin or Songwe with Tanzania and Malawi. So the only way governments or societies can harness and jointly use a limited resource in a way that is not competing harmfully is having transformative approaches. And this is where the WEF Nexus planning brings the aspect of policy and governance coherence. So what happens at the when there is governance and policy coherence is it creates a platform where we the users, which is the local communities, who have in most cases delegated their administrative rights to a national government or a regional organization, then get fair, sometimes not quite fair, but get reasonable access to these resources in the form of good water quality, reliable energy source. But also most important is with what we're calling with the triple planetary crisis, which is beyond the local or regional or continental context of Africa, then also regions, and particularly Africa, needs to adapt. So in such a way that when floods come, um, there are no blocking stumbling blocks. There are no trade-offs. For instance, a policy case in Songwe where the border is also a floodplain and also it's a river. So any change of rampant change in hydrological uh, characteristics in the basin such that there is a flood, then governments need to have a already existing platform or legal framework that creates a seamless integration. And in this case, the water, energy, and food planning approach, water, energy, and food nexus planning, then brings the multidisciplinarity Dr. Namo is talking about in urban context, in rural context, in regional transboundary context. Then you can scale and diagnose and scale and uh, provide a solution as per and when the need is required. Thanks. Next one. Yeah. So then when we call what are we calling water WEF centric policy nexus? Uh, Borrowing the inspiration from the interconnectedness, then a policy nexus, a WEF nexus policy centric approach, then will create kind of a bridge where we have at the global level, we look at the adaptations to climate change. In this case, the UNFCCC, the UN United Nations Framework for Climate Change, and the NDCs, and this is what we see at the global level. However, once you go from the global level to the national level, for example, in Songwe, the example I was talking about, this Songwe is an international border. So ideally, the military of Tanzania and the military of Malawi are solely responsible to take care of the border. However, the linkages between a national security requirement and a climate risk then has to be integrated such that military men, military engineer do not necessarily have to use military training to address a case of flooding or a case of health issue affiliated to floods. Then what a nexus approach gives is the ability internally, which we call it vertical coherence, whereby a government or a ministry in a government can internally cede their responsibility to a specific department, in this case from the Department of Defense to the Department of Environment and Agriculture, and then from that internal department at either side of the border, then they form the horizontal coherence, whereby this environment department in one organization, in one government, partners with another department in the other government, in this case the Ministry of Water in Malawi, Tanzania, and the Ministry of Environment in Malawi, to literally manage and run otherwise a military zone. Why so? Because an integrated approach or pluralistic thinking creates that holistic way to address complex issues that climate change has brought. And this is what we are seeing when you employ a water, energy, and food nexus approach. Next one, please. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is kind of a schematic of the case study of a policy coherence case in Songo River Basin. Songo River Basin, as again mentioned, is between Tanzania and Malawi, and it's also like the characteristics are quite unique, it being international border and also having the border, the internationally recognized boundary in between or at the midst, the most midpoint of the river. And what we are seeing in the African context is the water, energy, and food nexus approach is becoming quite useful from an emergency approach in such cases that governments are realizing that a siloed approach in managing floods, disasters, droughts only lowers the efficiency and also the impact of trying to address the issues. So in some way or in other cases, we are seeing a kind of a different approach at a policy level, which is a vertical approach where the government, the national ministry creates the national policy. And then within the national ministry, there is specific departments that are reliable and that consult and have been mandated to implement government policy independently. Then they have a way of probing, designing, and implementing certain goals and tools contextually to a specific case. In this particular case, the coherence that we identified is there was not much per se policy coherence, but there was governance coherence, meaning the policies in the paper value, in their value at the national scale, do not necessarily link or have synergy with one another. Meaning, for example, in Tanzania, they prefer expansion of irrigation land for agriculture, and then that comes with pollution. That affects the environment concern of the Ministry of Malawi. However, when there is a flood, the most important point of cooperation is to try and minimize, adapt to the impacts of flooding. So then at a governance level, this is when a case of emergency or climate induced risks in this context might and may be the low-lying fruits whereby government departments do not stick to strict national policies goals, but rather act on the need basis because of the risks of climate change. In this case, interactions of hydrological characteristics of the basin, such in high flow regimes, and really in the day-to-day management of the communities and the livelihood where the government derives its power is to try and provide enough land for farming and enough land for fishing. So if it's flooding, both of these do not serve either of the party. So a WEF Nexus coherence in the policy perspective in the Songo Basin is from a realization that floods, the whole basin is a floodplain, and floods do not either support the national objectives of Tanzania or national targets of Malawi. Therefore, there has to be certain levels of coherence at government to government. That's normally the horizontal, and internally within national government from the national ministry to a specific department within the ministry. And the next one, please. And at this juncture, I think this is Dr. Namu.
Thank you so much,
Okay,
Tumaini. Dr. Namu, you can go ahead, and Dr. Namu will be speaking on the challenges and opportunity of multi-stakeholder collaboration among different disciplines in the WEF Nexus.
Thank you, colleagues. Yeah, I'm going to just proceed from where Tumain just ended. And first of all, I want to give a background of where the WEF Nexus is coming from and where it is heading. Then I will provide the opportunities on what it can do. Right. I would like to emphasize that before 2015, the Water Energy Food Nexus was there. There are publications. Myself, I found 4 or 5 publications on the Water Energy Food Nexus. But from 2015, let me say from 2011, during the period when the sustainable development goals were being formulated, it was obvious people, science had already started
Dr. Namu, I don't think we can hear you. Oops. Dr. Namu, if you can hear us, I don't think we can't hear you. Sorry, we ran into technical challenges there. Let me try to reach him on phone.
Yeah, I think we'll try to connect. Meanwhile, I can just
Tumaini, do you want to continue? And then, yes, please.
If he's back, then I can. cede the floor.
Yeah, asante.
Hear me?
Yeah,
Oh,
now we can get you.
now we can hear you.
Oh, my apologies. It's hectic. This side I'm using a hotel Wi-Fi, so at times it can break. My apologies for that. And I had spoken a lot alone. So apologies for that. No, I was saying this. I'm going to give a background, then give the opportunities that the Water Energy Food Nexus can provide. And I was saying there is a before and after of the Water Energy Food Nexus when it was presented at the World Economic Forum in 2011 by the Stockholm International Water Institute. The period coinciding with the time when the Sustainable Development Goals were being formulated. So there's a strong link between the Sustainable Development Goals and the Water Energy Food Nexus. But before 2011, there are publications before 2011 on the Water Energy Food Nexus, but these remained sector centric. For example, they would emphasize more on integrated water resources management, where we are saying, remember, I've already given an example, and we are saying we need to transition from these monocentric approaches. Please, if you have a PhD or a master's on integrated water resources, we are not saying it's now useless. It's very relevant. It's a transitional period, and myself, I did a lot on that. I've written papers on those as well. So I'm not trying to say it's now useless. It's very relevant. That's why you are here. So it remained, it focused on linear models. So, but after 2015, it became cross-sectorial. There was that emphasis on transdisciplinary approaches, on holistic approaches, that is to promote or to catalyze transformational change toward the secular models. Next slide. Okay, but I think the question in most of us now, you people have taken of the Water Energy Food Nexus is something very important, but it seems things remain the same or they're even getting worse. Where is the problem? Where is the problem? What are the drivers and enablers of transformative and secular approaches? I think there's a lot of research that has been done on the Water Energy Food Nexus, but it has remained stagnant. Why? I think my wife again 4 in 10 is showing red here. Why? Because of lack of policy coherence. We need legislation and regulations that speak to each other, that are harmonized. And the consumer behavior should change. We should change the way we do things. Even the infrastructure and technology must change, must be smart. We must build smart infrastructure and have climate smart technologies that enhance resource use efficiency. Even the industry itself and urban and catchment planning and economies should transform without leaving anyone, without leaving anything behind. So we need integrated urban resources management, for example, intersectorial or harmonized regulations, policies, and incentives. Then we need smart innovations that speak to today's challenges. Then broad-based stakeholder connection, then new business models spearheaded by the secular economy. So our current national laws, international laws should transition towards coherence. Next, and my last slide, I suppose. Oh, I speak through these diagrams. Once I see these, I can even write a paper. I start by writing these things, and yeah. So those thematic areas can come again: drivers of change, risk and exposure, intervention and risk. How do we prepare and how do we reduce risk, and what are the resilience and adaptation pathways? We have got two major types of drivers: socio-ecological changes. I call them socio-ecological changes, which include environmental drivers and societal drivers. But I'm not going to draw much on that. I want to emphasize on multi-sectoral intervention and transformative approaches. And the main purpose is to catalyze. People were already behind with sustainable development goals. More than 85% of the sustainable development goals are showing retrogression. And there's already talk that there's no country on earth that is going to achieve the SDGs. So we need to drive this by 2030. Only how many years? 5 years to go. And we're already behind. And what are the challenges? There are barriers that we need to counter. I'm not going to talk much about that, but if you want, you can share, the organizers can share my email address. You can approach me and I will share with you some of the work that we have done. The barriers, for example, when here with the WEF Nexus, they think we are talking of having a mega water energy food nexus department or ministry, and people are afraid to lose their jobs. And one of the barriers is the lack of there was lack of integrated analytical tools, but now they are there, and they transformative. That's why we have got these new terms: just transition, the circular economy, horizon thinking, sustainable food systems, and so forth. And we need the actions. I'm not going to draw much on that, but the main purpose is that statement below. We need transdisciplinary actions and harmonized policy frameworks to drive the SDGs through the water energy food nexus. This is the most important opportunity that we have. It is not being implemented now because our policies remain sector-based. And that is what we are advocating for. The main challenge that we are facing is there's a huge gap between science and policy and implementation. Continuing with the status quo, continuing with the business as usual is only aggravating the contemporary challenges. And I say thank you. I think this is my last slide.
Thank
Next
you
slide.
very much. Sheila?
Oh, I still have something to say. Okay, no, I still have those conclusions. Okay. Today's WEF Nexus should provide pathways to a sustainable development. I think I've spoken a lot on that. And today's challenges are cross-cutting and therefore require cross-sectorial approaches that lead to transformational change. As a transformative approach that assesses spatial temporal management of resources, it is an important tool to assess progress towards the SDGs. Its use is enhanced by integrating other transformative approaches like scenario planning. I've already mentioned that, circular economy, just transition, horizon scanning, and sustainable food systems. Then the WEF Nexus is only one of the many nexuses that are available in literature. So thank you so much. That was my conclusion. And apologies for keeping people busy, thinking that Luxon is no longer. Everyone wants a piece of me, colleagues. And now from here, I'm going to talk again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Gladys,
Namubara. Yes.
Gladys, am I allowed to go or I have to wait? Let me wait. Okay, let me just wait.
You will wait because we have a panel and we will have maybe 2 questions for you at the end.
Okay, no,
So
that's
please,
fine. I
if
will
you
wait.
can
I will
hang
wait.
around another 30 minutes, we will appreciate. Thank you so much for that. So we will go to our final presentation before the panel discussion, which is by Ms. Jegede, and she's going to take us through the importance of the WEF Nexus around resilience and mitigation, risk and resilience. So Kemi, if you are ready, please take it away.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Gladys. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me. Firstly, I would just first start by saying that I don't know if that topic is fitting for what I will be talking about, but you can be the judge of that. Next slide, please. Okay, this, I think it has already, I've already been introduced, so we can move to the next slide. But I just want to say that I am coming from a very technical background, and for the past 5 years, I have just been focusing on energy specifically. And as has been discussed today, that our issues are not singular, they are not linear, they are interlinked, they are simultaneous, and they are holistic. So since last year, I have partnered with Opti MG, and we are now working on the integrated mini grid for water, energy, food nexus, and we are focusing on rural communities, isolated rural communities mostly, that don't have there is no plan in the near future for connecting them to the main energy grid. So we're looking at mini grid, and we're looking at all the associated food and water also that we can use to supply the needs for this community. So we are doing modeling, we are doing planning and optimization of smart and integrated mini grids for sustainable water and energy supply. Next slide, please. So for now, we're working on an open software, and the open software is what we put all the information that we get from site visits, from interviews with stakeholders, different stakeholders, government, technology specialists, farmers, entrepreneurs, and all the stakeholders involved in the community of interest. So we're getting that information, and we're using it now to develop an optimal integrated water, energy, food nexus that is suitable for the community of interest. Next slide, please. I'll just touch a bit on this because I think we all know that there are solutions, which previous speakers mentioned that some of them, some critics say they are far-fetched or they are very theoretical, but some of these solutions are actually practical and necessary for this community that we work with. So we have agrovoltaics, we have food process, we have solar power irrigation systems, water purification, desalination, and the list goes on. Next slide, please. So for the community that I will be talking about today, we're just in the preliminary stages, and for now, so far, we have done stakeholder interviews, and we've done one field visit, and we are starting with our data collection. And that's what I will be talking about, mainly the challenges. So we have identified many challenges in this community, and that's what I will be talking mainly about. The opportunities, I think it's something that we can still brainstorm. Is an ongoing discussion on what the opportunities, solutions to these challenges are. Next slide, please. So our open software for planning is as described in the diagram, where we have the back end and the front end. So what we hope to do is that we have this software where we could share with our stakeholders and generate information from the surveys and the data entered by the stakeholders, and from there we'll be able to develop an optimum water, energy, food nexus for the particular community of interest. Next slide, please. So yeah, today I'll be talking about community called Tumkwen in Namibia, and the community is located in the northeastern part of Namibia. And as I've said, I'm focusing mainly on communities that are not connected to the central grid, and they are very far. They are very far from the central grid, and it doesn't make economic sense to connect them to the central grid. So we're looking at alternatives to connecting them to the central grids. Anyway, Namibia has its unique challenge that it cannot power. The country actually imports 70% of its power from neighboring countries. So the central grid is already strained. So to talk about powering communities that are currently not powered is not really an option that we have right now. And Namibia, about 70% of 70 to 80% of the rural communities are unelectrified currently. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's this just showing the community that we visited, Tsumkwe. It's called Tsumkwe, and there's a little urbanization happening, but mainly it is informal settlements, informal communities. It's a rural setup. The bulk of the community is a rural setup, and we visited. And this is just to give you feedback on our visit to that community. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the community, as I've said, is isolated, and from the tarred road, it's about 300 kilometers gravel road, and the gravel road is not even it's not level, so it's a very bumpy journey, and the community is consists of I think they call it tropical savanna. So we have woodlands, and those are the natural vegetation, encroached bushes that we could think of opportunities for powering communities using these bushes. So we'll talk about that a bit later. Next slide, please. Yeah, so in the community, there have been some assistance from the government and from NGOs to assist the community. It's very dry. Rainfall. When we visited the community, they told us that there has not been adequate rainfall for the past 3 years. So rainfall is not frequent. The community is very dry, but there are some projects. There are some community projects that you can see in the diagrams there. There's drip irrigation. In the past, also, there have been large field crop farming, which is not shown here, but it has been done poorly, and because of the climate, this is not really this is not happening right now in the community. The crops have died, and they've not been able really to find a way to sustain them. But there are other agricultural activities happening. There is egg production. There's mini poultry, livestock farming, mainly cattle, but the community, as I've said, is drought in the community, and the community actually is not able to produce food for the people. And so in the picture shown there, we have the government stepping in to provide drought relief food for the marginalized community to sustain them. So this drought relief food is provided quarterly, and because the community also is not electrified, the drought relief food are dry. So it's like canned fish, canned food, dry grains to sustain them, because there is there's no food, and the climate is harsh. Next slide, please. Yeah, so as I said earlier, that there are a lot of NGOs stepping in to help the community, and one of the NGOs there is the World Food Program, and they're setting up an agricultural farm there where they plan to use boreholes to provide water, so that on the picture on that figure 8 there, they want to set up a fish pond. And so they've demarcated an area where there will be fish pond, there will be some farming, there will be some livestock, and hopefully this will help in job creation and also providing the much needed food for the community. So this is an ongoing building and planning that is but there are several challenges even for the setup. They are behind time. I think this should have been completed by early this year, but yeah, we are still they're still planning on how to set it up. And we will talk about some of the challenges that they're facing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the community in the past, they've set up a mini grid where they use solar and diesel. And the community actually, solar irradiation in Namibia is very high. Solar irradiation in Namibia is second highest in the world, second to, is it Chile? Yeah, I think Chile. So solar radiation is high. So PV is a good technology to power the community for most days in the year, and it does reach the demand, but there are challenges with maintenance, with technical know-hows. The PV panels are coupled with batteries that are not well maintained, and most of them are destroyed. And so, yeah, the mini grid is not working in the optimal state that it was planned to work. And diesel also, it can be challenging to get diesel because the community is isolated. Sometimes there are no trucks coming through to bring the diesel. So there are challenges with getting electricity when there's no diesel, and the weather is not really ideal for the PV supply. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah. So they are currently in the community, in the formal sector of the community. There is there are those 6 main storage tanks supplying water, and they do minor water purification. But we've taken some of the water, we've taken some water samples, and we are testing the water quality to see if it is fit for human consumption. So we will now inform our next decisions based on the results that we get from the water testing. Next slide, please. Yeah, so water is a huge challenge, and also this is supposed to be sewage disposal, which is supposed to be lined, and somehow it's supposed to, evaporation is supposed to happen, but somehow the sewage disposal site is dilapidated, and the sewage, because there's no centralized sewage line, so there's trucks and pumps that goes to different houses and pumps the sewage and dispose it off to this site. And this site, the lining of the sewage disposal pond is damaged, so we know that some of the sewage is actually seeping down into the water table, and that's the water that the community is consuming. So to be interesting to know how the quality of this water that is being consumed. And looking at the community expanding, and this could actually escalate to a bigger problem, because now maybe things can still be managed, but in the future, as the community is growing, this could be a huge issue. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the community also is there are a lot of wildlife in the community, so it's a very beautiful chaos of humans living with animals. And we know our elephants, they get very unhappy if there's no water, so they destroy boreholes in search. If they can smell the water in the boreholes, they will dig up the boreholes and try to get that water. So we have to prioritize getting water. So there are some wells for the wildlife to get the water, because if they don't have the water, that will be a challenge, because the infrastructure also will be damaged for the people. And so that's one issue also with the fish pond. They have to have a good fencing, because if the elephants pass through the fish pond, they smell the water, they can destroy the infrastructure. So we have to walk around living well with the wildlife in the community. So there are several challenges. That we've identified, and as been discussed before, these challenges are interlinked. They are interlinked. It's not just water, because now we're talking about the food agricultural farm, but agricultural farm needs water. The water, where are we going to get the power from? Because the mini grid is already at its maximum capacity. We cannot take any more load for the mini grid, so we have to solve the issue of the power for the farm. So, and then that provides food security. So you see how interlinked the water, energy, and the food is. But one thing that I have also identified here is, as coming from an energy perspective, when I model my mini grid for Tumkwe, one of the technologies that I put there was bioenergy, and has been discussed. We have human waste that we have poor disposal for, which we could channel into bioenergy. We have encroached bushes that we could use for bioenergy. And so these are some of the things that we can start talking about and see how we can focus on the challenges. The community is fast growing. It's urbanizing because of the opportunities that are coming now with the farming and small businesses starting up. People from neighboring villages are coming to an already strained resource community. So we have to think about how we can maintain this community or sustain this community. Also, we have challenges because they are rural community, the level of education is not high. So how will they maintain these technologies, these innovations that we're thinking about? Are we going to be talking about training them so that they can be able to manage their own infrastructures and systems in place? But these challenges are also opportunities. Yeah. So also one good thing about Tumkwe is that the water level is not that deep. So getting water from underground is not you only have to dig 20 to 40 meters, you get water from underground. There's huge amount of land, although the land is not as fertile as you would want it to be, and also there's the issue of the rainfall and the water. But because also of the wildlife, there's potential for tourism and generating income for the community. So yes, so I'm just describing the challenges and opportunities for this particular community, which is not unique, and there are several communities like that in Namibia, and this is an opportunity for us to be able to brainstorm on solutions to help improve the livelihood of people in this community. So yeah, these things that we talk about, they have serious implications. They are not just theory. They have practical applications. If we can implement them, they would change life and improve livelihood. I think that's the last slide. Yes. Yes. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kemi. I don't know why you are doubting, but I feel like this was a very practical presentation on the resilience and risk in one of our communities on the continent, and how the framework of water, energy, food has been utilized, because you start with talking about the core focus, which is the smart mini grids, and then we are ending up on boreholes and fish ponds, greenhouses. So I don't know if it was just me, but I think we could follow through and saw how the community is trying to be resilient given these technologies that are being implemented. So we will take a 4-minute break to give Kemi some breather, and then we will come back and have a round of questions for the panel for 30 minutes, and then we will wind up. So thank you so much, Kemi, for that. So we take
Thank
a
you
break
so much.
and then we resume. For others, it's 11:40, others 10:40, and us here in the East African is 12:40. That's when we will start. Thank you.
So sorry, can we put some questions, or it's not meant for this now, or which is?
Yeah, please go ahead. If you want to type, you can type. If you want to ask in plenary, you can ask in 3 minutes.
Okay. No problem. I just didn't understand. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I hope we are here and that our panelists are on standby. They didn't leave, hopefully.
Yes, one panelist is here, and I think my colleagues are also here.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tumaini. So I think my first question will go to Dr. I hope I will not massacre your word, your name. Let me use Oana because I don't think it will be fair to mispronounce your name. So,
Sure.
My first question would be on the issue of traditional knowledge and its incorporation in the WEF Nexus. I know that you are running a pre-funded program or project called LEDSOL, which is in the water sector. So I don't know what your experience has been, especially from the African partners that you have in the project, on how important it is to incorporate traditional knowledge into the WEF Nexus.
So, sorry, how important it is to, and then the last, exactly the question I didn't understand.
What's the experience has been in your project and the space for traditional knowledge in the WEF Nexus?
So we are cooperating in LEDSOL. That's the name of the project, which is funded under LIPRE. We are collaborating with Togo and Algeria, and I think the approach and the needs are different, in the sense that in Algeria there are communities which are like the nomad communities, which we will include in our pilot studies, which are in like for whom the access to clean water, to safe water basically is crucial. But then there are the communities in the cities who have access to uh, to to drinkable safe water. They have tap water basically. So the needs there, they are stringent for a smaller portion of the population than for Togo. So in Togo, I believe from what we have seen during our visits locally, that clean water and safe water is really an issue, and it is coupled, as it was presented previously, with a need for reliable power for energy, such that if there is a system which can produce safe drinking water, that system can have the required power to be used. Um, and um, and so that the development of our project is following these two observations. For example, in Togo, we will rely heavily on solar energy to power our cleaning and disinfection water unit. While in Algeria, our prototype is powered. Of we have two prototypes. One will be for use in homes for those people who would like to maybe use traditionally established water sources like various springs, spring water, surface water. And another prototype will be for the nomad population, where again solar energy will be used. I'm not sure. Did I answer your question? Because the sound was not so good.
No, it's okay. And it is good that you raised that point on solar pumps for water systems. And so my second question will be on the investment strategies around these innovations in the WEF Nexus approach. And I think we can have Tumaini or Doc Namu. What is your take on investment strategies for these innovations in the WEF Nexus on the African continent?
So
No, thank you, Greg.
go Doc.
Go ahead to mine.
Ideally, in the what we're seeing in the African WEF context is funding or investment into it can be classified hugely into three perspectives, where we have development for sustainability. That means in line with the SDG goals, we have development partners that are interested in helping vulnerable communities, so that from development in terms of donor beneficiary relationship. We also have seeing what we're seeing now as mitigation approach, whereby we it's investment in revenue generating spaces such as green energy, and this is in line with the United Nations framework for climate change, where we are going green, and with the current loss and damage approach, whereby grids are being maximized to increase energy for industrialization, energy for agriculture, in such a way that it's an investment, either PPP or government to government. And then we also are experiencing what we call domestic sector development, where the domestic economy, in a case like in Kenya, domestic borrowing to invest in large scale agriculture, and then plow back or feed development from food security to sell and expand the economy of such a case. So,
Dr. Namu. Thank you, Tumaini.
No, I think Tumaini has said it quite well. Yeah, but I would also like to emphasize that investment for the water energy food nexus has been quite low. It has not been funded as we would have expected, because it's a transition. Maybe policymakers are not understanding, but there is a huge need for the public and private sectors to come together and pour more resources into water energy food nexus. What we need is no longer theory. We want to put into practice what science has said. Remember, my last statement was there is a huge gap between science and policy and implementation that has been lacking. We need to advocate for more resources on the water energy food nexus. Thank you.
Thanks, Doc. I will have a question circling back to you, because you're saying we need to have more strategies on how to mobilize these resources. And there is one person who has inboxed me a question and saying, as people in academia, how do we go about supporting these investment strategies? We are not profit-making institutions, but you see, research is very important for these innovations. So what are the tips you'd give such people in terms of mobilizing resources, or any kind of collaborations that would therefore mobilize resources for these kind of innovations?
Okay, no, thanks, Gladys. I think that is very important. Strategy is quite important on getting resources, enough resources to do research. Yeah, remember they said they say if we want to achieve more, we need to collaborate. We need to go together. So collaboration as a single institution, there's no way. Funders are looking into collaboration, collaborative research, So as the researchers, as institutions, we need to put our heads together and gather the right minds and to make sure that we come up with some good proposals that needs to be taken further above to our policymakers and say yeah, both public and private, and just to to bring them on board, that they understand the challenges that we are facing now, that they may be able to pour resources into, but collaboration is the key. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doc. My final question would go to Kemi, and then we will have Mashauri coming after me. And my question to Kemi would, as you said earlier, challenges are also opportunities. And I think we have seen that very clearly. So from what you have presented to us, which was a very practical example in terms of the innovation from the Energy Development Nexus, and also doubling it up with Tumaini's presentation of policy integration, I wanted to understand from your experience trying to implement these projects, would you say that there is coherence in terms of the communities that you're trying to support? Because these are marginalized communities, I suppose. Is there coherence between the local government and the national government? And are you seeing success in it? And then I think there is a question for you on the chat, which is, from your point of view, what is the most failing in this case study and in other similar cases of the WEF Nexus? So I think the first question would be, is there coherence in terms of local to national government? And then what is the most failing components that we can learn from, I presume? Kemi. Oh, is Kemi, maybe she dropped. I don't see her. Okay, I think Mashauri, you can go ahead and ask your questions to the panelists, and
Yes.
you can introduce yourself and then go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So my name is Mashauri Muliro. I work with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. I'm coming from the TRR disaster risk management perspective. So I have about 2 or 3 simple questions. The first one, maybe you'll go to, what's the name again? Dr. I forget the name. I'm not seeing the name here. So it's the first presenter, Dr. Namo. Yeah, so very good presentation, but a bit of maybe in the conceptual framework, didn't come out clearly. This is more of a comment, the link between climate change and extreme weather events like drought and flood, and how this will affect the quality and the quantity of water, and the chain going into the energy provision and the feedback loops. So this is more of a comment if there is room, but already the concept note is already difficult and complex. I don't know how there is space to highlight that interlink. In his presentation, he read the issue of breaking the silos. And I know one of the way of looking at it is the integration or interoperability of systems. So I wanted to understand if there is already some work conducted in that field, whereby you are trying to look at the climate change production models, how this will mean in terms of increase or decrease of extreme flood events, and what this will translate in terms of water quality and quantity, and the energy deficiency. So maybe the yield reduction in food. So it will be important to understand if there is already that kind of work being conducted. And again, coming from the disaster risk management, we are really embracing the anticipatory action in that we are not waiting for an event to occur or water rationing or electricity load shed to happen, but we are trying to be more of in anticipation. And already in the region, a number of efforts have been put together to understand how the seasonal outlook is, and trying to anticipate the amount of rainfall likely to have in a certain region. So already on that basis, I think there is room already to translate the work on anticipatory action into understanding the water security, the food security, but also the energy security, that outlook, the projection, the forecasting aspect. So I wanted to understand if there is already some work in that field. To our colleague Tumaini, nice name, very good Swahili name, just like my name Mashauri. Yeah, so you raised a question on transboundary. And yeah, I do understand that transboundary comes to a lot of sensitivities, especially if you are looking at the basin, water basin, and that has been your case between Tanzania and Malawi. Myself, I've worked in Lake Chad, and the same issues were there between Chad, Niger, Nigeria, on the use of the Lake Chad water. So I wanted to understand how best can you navigate that issue of transboundary, and what could be the role of an institution, like for the case of your study, what could be the role of SADC? Because both Tanzania and Malawi, they are within the SADC. What could be the role of this regional economic commission that could play in negotiating the issue of transboundary? But also to all the presenters, I didn't see much on conflict. Yeah, maybe it's not a serious concern in the SADC region, but globally, I mean, at the continental level, we are having a lot of cases of conflicts. Some people call it FCV, fragile conflict and violence context, and a number of countries, they fall into that category. And one aspect of this is about the displacement, but also access to all these resources. I didn't see any attention given to this, so I wanted to understand if it's an isolated case or if there is room to address that within the framework of the Nexus. Lastly, to Jeged, I don't know if is there, the issue of animal and human conflict. Yeah, so I wanted to understand, yeah, it was more of a challenge, but is there any good opportunity that comes with that, and how best can you negotiate, can you address that issue? And also you raised the issue of indigenous knowledge. I would really like to understand if there are some very good cases in the, what the name, Nsukwe, of indigenous knowledge on how they navigate the issues that they face, be it on prediction of weather, be it on energy, or they develop tools and systems that help them to navigate. So it will be very important to understand what this contribution to the field of knowledge. Over.
Oh, thank you, Mashauri. I think those are very good questions in as much as there are many. So I don't know, do we start with Dr. Namu? Your question was, I mean, it was more of a comment, the space of extreme events and the impact of climate change in the models. I think even Tumaini can answer that. Doc.
Okay, no, let me come first, Gladys. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I see Kem is back. So, very good questions, Mushauri. Very good and interesting, and coming from a person who is on the ground, seeing what is happening. Yes, yeah, the framework still needs improvements. We are working on that. When I got in and I was just rushing, I wanted to mention quite a lot, but I was also aware of the time. But I work for the Water Research Commission in South Africa. I'm a funder myself. I've just funded the research, which is starting 1 December from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, where we are developing, where the team is going to develop a water energy food nexus scenarios. If you remember the diagram on the spider graph, it was for South Africa showing the our resources are being managed between 2015 and 2020. You can see there's a change. So these scenarios will indicate how, where to intervene and how to intervene in order to maintain sustainability. So we have just funded such kind of a research in South Africa. But yes, I totally agree with you. Interventions in the regions are more reactive and we are not proactive. So this project will enhance the proactiveness of our policymakers. It's not like in America, they know that Ellen is coming. It's now in the Caribbean. It's now in Florida, and they can move people on time. Yet in Southern Africa, it's still a very big challenge. Our interventions are reactive. So that's something that we need to improve. The project is quite small, and as a Water Research Commission, we're only focusing on South Africa. We cannot go beyond the borders of South Africa. But please remember, climate change does not recognize political boundaries. So it's something that if there are people want to come in and also expand it to other countries within the region, you are welcome to come and work with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Namu. Tumaini, I think you can talk on the anticipatory action, so the seasonal outlook, which means forecasting of these extreme events, and then the transboundary challenges question.
Yeah, thanks, Gladys. Mashauri, thanks for the good question. So, from a DRR perspective, disaster risk reduction, early warning signs, specifically in the global south and also in Africa, are getting quite attraction now. The challenge that is there is that we don't have quite enough tools to collect, because to collect, for example, precipitation, pollution, nutrient isotopes in different cases. So what happens is, if we don't have sufficient or significant data to have what we call a baseline scenario, then it becomes quite challenging to predict what will happen. So the trends, and I think South Africa is doing quite considerably well in Africa with this kind of databases that show the past, and they can give the power to, or the ability to use specific scientific tools to predict. However, having said that, it's not all dull and gloomy, because now there is very deliberate interest from different countries in Africa to realize and invest in collecting this data. So, from a disaster risk reduction perspective, if you link it with the composite indicators provided by our WEF approach, then you combine this, you can predict the amount of precipitation. You can also use it and combine it with the amount of food production that is given by a certain land use change. In this case, expansion of or mechanized agriculture. Also, you can look at it from evapotranspiration or transpiration. So ideally, what we are as at Africa, we are currently at the point of harnessing our data. So if we combine, or we bring all these different types of collecting the history of the data, then we can have a very strong way to predict the future. So if you have a strong basis to predict the future, then it comes to the challenge or the complexities of transboundary regions. Well, dealing with transboundary cases, as you rightly said, is quite sensitive, and also it requires a very low expectation approach. What do I mean by low expectation approach? Like in the case of Tanzania and Malawi, a transboundary region, the Songwe River Basin, you have to look at the context of the particular basin you're looking at. So if it's mineral, high value mineral rich transboundary region, for example, in Songo, where we have quite good minerals there, then the chances are if you go from it in a resource acquisition or management approach, then you will definitely be in problem with the government. However, as the researcher or as the development partner, if you go at it as from a perspective of adapting or mitigating the losses or from emergencies that are outside the control of both governments, then you eventually have all the stakeholders on board because they see you are contributing to a logic of optimality, meaning you are trying to make the operational area provide maximum benefits or optimal benefits to these stakeholders. So the point of entry is you do not go to prescribe, you go to um, listen to the stakeholders and analyze before going to these transboundary regions on the sensitive issues. You rightly mentioned the case of security. Remember, we had been talking about resource securitization. So in the absence of enough securitization, then competition. Competition always or almost in majority of cases when it becomes cutthroat, then it creates conflict. An example is the northern part of Kenya in the Omogibe Basin between Kenya and Ethiopia and Somalia, where we have high, very dry region and limited water resources. Then there is conflicts, although not quite communicated or amplified between livestock or nomadic pastoralists and local agricultural farmers. So if you look at coherence and policy and governance coherence in transboundary regions, what we are learning is it starts from understanding what type of coherence is there. So is it a vertical? Is it a ministry to department and department to department kind of coherence? And then is it a government to government, meaning a ministry in one government to a ministry in another government? And once we identify this, then at what specific scale or interest do they start the cooperation?
Thanks a lot, Tumaini, and thank you for also capturing part of that question on where is conflict, how can we embed it in the framework. I think it is one of the things that come up as secondary subjects to the WEF Nexus, which I think Dr. Namo had shared. So we have things around health, climate change, socioeconomic issues, and I think conflict comes under it, which comes with the complexities of the framework. So it's not easy to have everything, but I think there are people who are also looking at conflict. So Mashauri, I think we will try as much as possible to keep you in touch with people who are looking at the WEF Nexus and conflicts in the three sectors, so that you can also help in whichever way, and also they can also help you. So thank you so much. The other question was to Kemi. I think you had not joined us yet. So the question that Mashauri had for you was the issue around animal and human conflicts in your project and how you're going about it, and also the tools. Mashauri, if you could please take it again for Kemi so that she's able to answer you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Yeah, so the question was on the animal-human conflicts that are challenge. I wanted to understand how this can be negotiated. And the second question was on some good case studies on indigenous knowledge. So I know that people coming from the Chukwe, they have been living in that environment, so they have developed their own adaptation capacity. So it's very important to capture those capacities as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. Yeah, I don't know if we have all the answers yet. We are still trying to figure out the answers to this question. But the animals are also our stakeholders. So when we consider modernization, we also have to think about not infringing on their free living, because they don't have too much of a ask. They only want water and the free space to move. And if we fence specific areas, as long as the animals have enough water, like the elephants are I think you can say the most dangerous of the animals around there. But if they have water, they don't really destroy infrastructure. What they're looking for is water to drink. Fenced areas, they just walk around fenced areas and they move around freely with the humans. And the specific community actually is indigenous to traditional nomads. So in the past, these communities were nomads. They know how to coexist with their environment, with animals. They do hunting. They still do hunting, subsistence hunting. It's not for commercial purpose. They are hunting sustainably. They're not depleting the wildlife around them. They have traditional ways of hunting. They have traditional ways of getting water, even in that dry community. They know which routes to get water from. They know when the rainfall will happen and how to maximize the use of the rainfall, how to hunt during the rainy season. They use elephant dung for medicinal purposes. I don't know if you know, during COVID, they were burning the elephant dung and inhaling it, and somehow it was helping breathing. It was helping improve their breathing. So they have knowledge on the medicinal use of animal dung, especially elephant dung. They say is very rich, and they also have a lot of natural indigenous plants that is around them that they use for several medicinal purposes. As I said, there is bushes around them, which some of them use to carve their sculptures, and they sell to tourists. And some of them, they use it. They produce coal. They produce coal and sell it. So they're industrious in their traditional way, and if left alone without too much modernization, they can survive. They can survive. But now that the population is expanding at an extent that may not be able to sustain, and that's why the government is really trying to come in and help, and also trying to educate, because the government agenda of educating the community. So they are building schools, they're building clinics. They're helping them. There's a bakery. There's a new bakery. When I went there, they started up a new bakery. So they're just helping community people who have ideas to start up small businesses in the community. But the community has indigenous knowledge that they're using. I'm just mentioning some of them. There are a whole lot of. If you talk to the community people, they are more than happy to share with you indigenous knowledge, how their parents and their forefathers have been surviving in that community. And yeah, so yeah, there's a lot to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so okay, sorry. Before that, I just want one other opportunity. I think I've mentioned in the past, but tourism is can be a good opportunity for that community because of the wildlife and the indigenous way of living. I think if there can be enough support, it will boost the economy of the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kemi. I think David also had a question for you, which was, what is the most failing in this case study that we can learn from?
The most failing?
What challenge, the most, what is not going well that we can learn from?
Okay. The large crop farming field, because, well, there's no rainfall. Also, I think from the past, the community have learned that you have to put the animals first. Building boreholes without well for the elephants just resulted in the boreholes being destroyed because the elephants can smell the water and they will pull out the boreholes so that they can get the water. So just considering the animals and considering the climate, and also indigenous people are very traditional, just involving them, allowing them to be part of whatever decisions that the government or private stakeholders want to implement. Because at the end of the day, if it's high level, if it's not fitting for the community, not all technology innovations and solutions are fitting for the community. So if it's not fitting, if it's too advanced, then it becomes a problem. Because even like there's a primary school and there's a secondary school there now, and there's been huge challenges with the power because there are a lot of restrictions when it comes to the mini grid because of the solar, and there's a lot of they tell them these are the this you can't use like a hair dryer, you can't use A, B, and C, you can't use this kind of stove. But you see that students coming from outside, used to a particular lifestyle, cannot really adapt to that limitation, and they don't want to be limited as electricity. So why can't I use electricity to do A, B, and C? So yeah, there are a few of those challenges and also the education. The education is not as high as we would want it to be. So in terms of managing a very sophisticated mini grid, we have to get someone from external to come, and most external people don't like to stay very far from modernization. So we have challenges with having a fixed person stay there. So yeah, those are some of the challenges.
Okay, thank you so much, Kemi. I think David, you got that. Lucy is back and she wanted to ask questions. Lucy, I think we will take you as the final, and then
yes,
because
please.
of time. Yeah,
thank you. Sorry, I fell out of the meeting, and I thought it was maybe my problem. Anyways, I do not have really a question in such, but more of a reflection. Listen to Dr. Namo from his presentation. That was a very nice presentation, and to mine as well. And my reflection on what the two have been presenting, it's on the issue of interdisciplinarity, which I think is the key here when it comes to finding Africa making a progress in the WEF approach. And I think this should start with our academic institutions, because what I think is that we in Africa, most institutions, I myself am from Tanzania, I educated myself from University of Dar es Salaam. We only have this kind of very specific ones that we have to follow. But we have now to try to think of how we can make interdisciplinarity in our courses, how to make our curricula change. If somebody studies engineering, doesn't mean that it should be only engineering. We have other things that link with engineering. If we want to make an electric production from the water source that we have, but we also have to think of the people using the same water for irrigation. But as long as the engineers will focus only on producing electricity, won't think about the farmers, the people doing agriculture, depending on irrigation. So if we try to bring the issue of interdisciplinarity in our curriculums, I think that will make a difference. That's where we also produce policymakers, So if we have policymakers who have interdisciplinary knowledge, can think about how to make policy effective on how these things can work out. I think you also mentioned about the issue of, I also think about the issue of the top-down approach, where our governments comes with these projects from above and impact us to the community who have no knowledge of how to do it, but they do not really have a knowledge. They do have knowledge. It's only that some cases we ignore the community knowledge. That if we involve them and we have these projects starting from the from bottom up, could be different. So far, this is my reflection. I'm not sure if somebody else have discussed about this, but when I was out of the meeting, but this is what I think, that if we have to build interdisciplinarity from our students that we are bringing to be policymakers in the future, that will make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucy. No one had that reflection, and thank you so much. I agree that it is very important to institutionalize some of these components of the framework in our curricula, despite the disciplines. David, please go ahead. Hello, David. I'm not sure if I am audible.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello,
okay.
everybody.
Great.
Sorry,
Hi.
I don't really have no questions to put. I apologize because I received the response about the case study, and it is very well for me. Thank you very much for your approach. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, David. Mashauri, you still want to say something?
No.
I see your hand up. Okay.
It's a legacy hand.
It's a legacy hand. Okay. Thank you so much. So I think at this point, I would want to call this to an end. We will provide the presentation of all the speakers and to your email addresses. Feel free, the contacts will be there if you want to reach out to them directly, if you need more conversations around what we have discussed today, feel free to reach them. And then also, I think at this point, I would like to market Dr. Namu's Global WEF Nexus Community of Practice. I put the link on the LinkedIn, on the chat below. Please feel free to join that community of practice. You will find so many opportunities around the WEF Nexus, and it's not just WEF. You will find other things around WEF plus health, WEF plus climate change, WEF, and all other secondary things that are associated. So feel free to join in there for your capacity and development. And then you can also check out the LIPRI projects. The link is still on the chat. You can check the One Planet projects and reach out. All these contacts are on the internet, on the websites. Feel free to reach out to us, and then we can always work together. So thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us in this discussion. Thank you for making it very interactive, and also for the feedback that you've given us, so that we see how best to integrate some of your feedback and comments into this framework. It was nice having you, and see you again. We will have other webinar series. We have a clean cooking webinar series that is coming up in 2 weeks. We will be sure to send some of this information to you, and then we will have more in the first quarter of next year, God willing. Thank you very much, and have a very good day.
Thank you. See you again.
Okay. Thanks. Have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.